Hello ladies and frogs, and welcome back to another video. So last week I told you guys that I was going to make a couple separate videos, separate from my life update, but talking about some things that happened this year. So today's video is one of those. I specifically wanted to talk about something that I think is funny now, but I did not think was funny at the time. And that's basically the story of how I got my dog back after she was stolen. Now the intro is not going to be super long. I just want to stop in really quick, see how you guys are doing, let you know what the video is going to be about. Make sure to stick around for the end of the video though, because I do want to yap at you guys a little bit. And without further ado, let's get on to the story time. So if you guys don't know, which I don't know how you couldn't, I have a dog named Beetle. I have literally raised her since the day she was born. She is the light of my life, and I will never miss an opportunity to talk about her. So I'm going to show some pictures of her up on screen. And today's video is going to be about how I had to fight a 50-year-old lady to get her back after she was stolen. I'm going to preface this by saying I do not condone any of what happened in this video. I do not condone violence of any kind. I did what I felt like I had to do at the time. So take everything that happens with a grain of salt. So for context, we got to go back about 2 years, when I was still living in my old apartment and my presence on YouTube was at its peak. I've explained this before, but due to personal security reasons, I was unable to keep living on my own, which is when my partner's mom asked if I could move in with them for my safety. I jumped at the opportunity to get out of where I was. The only issue was that I could not bring my dog with me because my partner's brother was allergic to pets. I floundered for a while trying to figure out where to go. All I knew was I couldn't stay where I was. I had texted around for a while, and eventually my younger sister agreed to take Beetle in for me for a while, just until I got back up on my feet. At the time, this was, in my head, the best option for me, seeing as my younger sister coincidentally had Beetle's sister, Princess, living with her as well. And she lived with my grandpa, who had a huge backyard and other dogs for her to play with. Things moved pretty quickly from there. I dropped Beetle off at my sister's house, moved in with my partner, and everything seemed to be going pretty smoothly until about 3 months later. My grandpa was getting sick of having so many dogs around, so he messaged me asking me to take Beetle back and find somewhere else for her to stay. This ended up causing an argument between us because I had literally nowhere else to bring her, and I still wasn't in the position to take her home. So eventually, I had to go pick her up, and I ended up spending the whole day in my car with her, and then I had to spend that night in the garage because, like I said, I couldn't bring her into my partner's home. It took all day, but eventually I found a friend who agreed to take her in for me. She was even excited to do so. So the next morning, I drove to her house and dropped Beetle off. I explained the details of Beetle's feeding habits, how to use her harness, what kind of treats she liked, and left. And for a few weeks afterwards, I was getting regular updates on her care, getting told stories of how she'd been doing, and it felt like the perfect situation for me. But then, of course, my friend had to move back in with her family 2 hours away, and she had to take Beetle with her. I wasn't super concerned initially, but over time, the updates became less and less until it got to a point where I was only hearing from my friend maybe 2 to 3 times a month. So skipping forward a little bit, I talked last week about moving out of my partner's house and in with a different friend of mine. This was very exciting because not only was I gaining back some of my independence, but I could also get Beetle back, and I literally could not wait. It had been so long at this point since I had seen her. Immediately after confirming my move-in date, I called my friend to let her know the plan. Of course, she was super happy for me and basically asked me to give her a time and a place, and she'd be there to give my dog back. I'm sure this is unsurprising, but of course, when I told her Tuesday at 6 p.m., she coincidentally did not show up. I texted and called and heard nothing back. I think I texted her a minimum of like 30 times over the next 2 weeks trying to figure out what happened and where my dog was. I had the absolute worst case scenarios running through my head, like what if she wanted to keep Beetle, or what if she got hit by a car and she's too scared to tell me. I literally didn't know. And it was at that point that I realized if I wanted Beetle back, I had to take matters into my own hands because this was not going to get solved on its own. The issue was that I was working with virtually nothing. My friend had moved, and all I knew was the town name she had moved to. I didn't know her schedule or when she would be home. All I had to go off of was that she kept Beetle off leash and out in the front yard for most of the day, and that if Beetle saw me, she would immediately come running. So I did a deep dive. I pulled an all-nighter doing some research online. Because if there's anything that being a content creator has taught me, it's that your private information is not very private nowadays. So it took me until 4 a.m., but I had finally found her new address and I started making a plan. I called my dad and I asked him to be my getaway driver. I texted all of my friends to let them know what was happening, and I ran my plan by multiple people to make sure that I wasn't going to get in trouble for what was about to happen. So that Saturday, my dad and I were on our way. We drove 2 hours from my hometown to where my friend lived, and I showed up at her front door. Now, of course, problem number one arose when I parked my car and did not see a dog in sight. I watched the front door and knocked, scared that maybe I'd gotten the wrong address or that Beetle was no longer here for some reason. But luckily, when a woman who looked just like an older version of my friend answered, I knew that I was at least a little bit on the right track. I asked if my friend was there, and the woman expectedly said no, because who's going to say yes to a stranger? So I was now back to square one. I went back to sit in my car, and I was talking to my dad, running over ideas for what to do next, and then it hit me. I knew this girl worked 5 minutes from her house. It was something she'd mentioned in passing, and I also happened to know which fast food restaurant she worked at. So that's when Plan B went into effect. If I couldn't get answers at the house, I would definitely get answers if I showed up to her job. That was my thought process anyway. So I opened up Google Maps and searched the area for every nearby fast food restaurant and started driving. Eventually, I found her in the middle of the shift, and I'm not kidding, I watched all of the color drain from her face the second she saw me. She immediately ushered me into the back of the store, and the excuses started. She was stumbling over her words, trying to explain to me what had happened. Long story short, she said she was going through a really bad depressive episode and hadn't been speaking to anyone. I was not unique in the situation. In my head, I was trying my best to remain as complicit as possible because she was the only thing between me and my dog, and I knew that she had an attitude problem, so if I said one wrong thing, she could just tell me to screw off. I quote-unquote accepted her apology and asked what we could do to facilitate my dog's return to me, and that was when problem number 2 came up. Since moving back in with her parents, her stepmom had taken quite a liking to Beetle, and over time started referring to my dog as hers. Any mention of me taking her back caused her to fly into a rage, so my friend told me it would be difficult getting her back. She and I devised a plan right there that unfortunately involved me waiting around for 5 hours. Keep in mind, it was 10 a.m. and she didn't get done with work until 3. So I waited, much to my dad's dismay, in the parking lot until then. When work was over, she texted her family, letting them know she was on her way home and that I was coming with. When we got to the house, I walked in behind my friend and introduced myself the best I could. Her stepmom got up from the couch and shook my hand. We all talked for a bit, and then I brought up the elephant in the room. Where was my dog? The stepmom and my friend exchanged looks, but eventually led me into a bedroom in the very back of the house. When she opened the door, I noticed a small pet carrier on the floor that was like half covered with a blanket. Stepmom walked into the room and opened the pet carrier, and that was the first time I had seen Beetle. She picked her up and held her for a moment, but the second Beetle saw me, she went crazy. She was crying and yelping and scratching this lady to get out of her arms and into mine. She eventually jumped out of her arms and ran to me. I had started crying because I had been so anxious about her well-being. I was so glad to see her safe. So from this point on, I did not let Beetle go. I held her in my arms the entire time I was there, and occasionally stepmom would interrupt the conversation to talk about how well she's taken care of Beetle and how she's basically her baby. Now, at this point, I just had to figure out how to leave. Stepmom was blocking the door of the room I was in, so I couldn't just walk out. I ended up asking my friend if she wanted to come say hi to my dad, which she agreed to and told me she'd meet me outside. I got up and started walking, and as I was walking away, the stepmom was asking if she could have Beetle back really quick. I said no because my dad wanted to say hi to her, and that's when she totally flipped. She said, quote unquote, "You're gonna give me back my dog, bitch," and whipped around me by my shoulder. She smacked me in the face, started scratching at my arms, and even grabbed one of my fingers and bent it all the way back. If I wasn't double jointed, I'm like 100% certain that she would have broken it. I was yelling for my friend and she wasn't coming out of the room, and that's when I realized that she knew it was going to get physical and she just wanted to stay out of the way. After a bit of scuffing, the lady wrapped her fingers around Beetle's collar and yanked as hard as she could, trying to pull Beetle from my arms. She made this really gross, gurgled, choking sound, and I immediately snapped. I turned to face stepmom and used my shoulder to shove her as hard as I could. She went tumbling into the wall, knocking down a bookcase and falling to the floor. and I used that opportunity to make a beeline for the front door, yelling to my friend that I would see her later. As I ran to my car, this lady chased behind me, threatening to call the police, saying I'm stealing her dog, the whole 9 yards. I jumped in the car and told my dad to punch it, and I pulled out my phone to see my friend had texted me from inside, telling me to just leave and that she'd handle it if her stepmom called the police. Now, later that night, after I'd gotten home, a police officer did actually call me, but to my shock, he asked me if I wanted to press charges on her for putting her hands on me. He basically explained that I'd done everything right. I had written proof that their caretaking was temporary. I entered the home with permission, and I didn't throw the first punch, so I was totally in the clear. And I had heard from my friend afterwards that when the police showed up, she explained the situation, and the cops basically said tough luck to the stepmom before leaving. So I told the officer I wouldn't press charges as long as she left me alone. And luckily, aside from 100 Facebook posts telling me that I stole her dog, I haven't heard from her since. The funniest part is that to this day, she still posts on Facebook telling people I stole her dog and telling them that if they see me, they should take her back. Over the next few weeks, I took Beetle to the vet to make sure she was okay, and she had turned out to be totally fine despite the collar yanking incident. I did end up losing like 6 nails in the fight, so I was also pretty sore myself. But now, over a year later, Beetle is happy and healthy, and she's the love of my life, and we're totally good. And I actually don't talk to that friend anymore because I felt like she handled the situation super immaturely. And I think her throwing me into that situation where she knew it was going to get violent without telling me was kind of a shitty move. I know the situation could have gone significantly worse, but honestly, as long as I got my dog back, I wouldn't have cared how it happened. But that is the story of how I had to fight a 50-year-old lady after she stole my dog. If you guys want to hear more story times like this, go ahead and let me know. I try really hard to stay as linear as possible, and I actually ended up writing a script out for today just because I was a little anxious about trying to get the story right. So let me know if you guys liked the way that this video came out. I'm actually going to be doing a Q&A next week because I feel like I haven't done one of those in a while. So if you guys want to go ahead and leave me a question, you can go check out my Instagram or my Twitter, or you can check out my posts on here where I'll have a link to a Google Drive so you can ask me questions if you'd like. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any other video ideas for me. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!